So if we believed a thing and we thought a thing and it served us, perfect. But in order to move to the next level, we've outgrown that thinking, and it's okay to have new thinking. And I would encourage us to have thinking that supports us and empowers us, one where it says, believing in myself isn't arrogant. It's just a kind, supportive thing to do for myself.
Welcome to the Mindset for Runners podcast, helping you to access and unlock your true potential as an athlete.
So I'm bringing in a special guest today who has in fact been on this podcast before. It was the most listened to interview of all time on this podcast and the second most listened to episode ever. I'm actually talking about, if you haven't guessed already, Claudine Chi, high-performance mindset coach, working with elite-level athletes, passionate athletes, government leaders, you name it. And of course, I've worked with Claudine. Claudine's been busy doing something quite amazing, and she's built this incredible journal. It's called the Athlete's Ultimate Self-Belief Journal, a 365-day mental training program to build unstoppable belief in just 5 minutes a day. You know how I love to scour the internet looking for the latest mindset stuff to share with all of you. I work with sports psychologists, mindset coaches, and I find the best stuff out there to share practical stuff with you. Well, there's nothing out there like what Claudine has created, and I've been working through the journal with her and the group, and it's absolutely brilliant. So I wanted to get her on the podcast again to share all these incredible insights and her expertise with you about self-belief. I know how much people want to know more about self-belief, so I already predict that this episode is going to be our most downloaded episode of all time. There you go, I put it out there. It's going to be full of deep insights, super practical as always, and really strategic and practical application of self-belief. And of course, you're going to get tons of value. So buckle up, listen in. This is going to be epic. Claudine Chi, thank you so much for giving up your time to be on this podcast with me today.
Thank you, Rob. Love the intro. And I am not giving up my time. I am overjoyed to be here with you and to have this conversation. So thank you so much for having me on Mindset for Runners.
Awesome. Talk about you so often on this podcast. You've helped me in so many ways. But what you've done, I know you've been working this for a long time. What you've done is really putting the tools that you've used with all of your athletes and other people you work with into this journal. And I've just got so much out of it so far. So I'm just super grateful that you can unpack it more with me.
Awesome. My pleasure, Rob. It's going to be unreal.
All right. So we're going to do a deep dive today on self-belief. You work with elite athletes. You work with Olympians. You work with athletes like me who just want to explore their potential and grow. You work with leaders in government, corporate world. Can I ask, who do you find struggles the most with self-belief?
Okay, the person who struggles the most with self-belief is the person who has never trained their mindset. So it doesn't matter if you are Olympic level. It doesn't matter if you've been around for a couple of years. It doesn't matter what sport or field you're in. If you haven't looked at your own thinking and your own belief system and sort of made an agreement with yourself about who you are, what you want to believe in, how prepared you are to believe in yourself, then you are unfortunately going to struggle with self-belief. Again, it might seem that the people who are at the top, we make assumptions about people who are at national champion level. And we think they're going to be so full of self-belief. Incorrect. We might look at Olympians and think they're going to be so full of self-belief. But the truth is, if you haven't worked on your mindset and if you haven't consciously and intentionally worked on your self-belief, then respectfully, you haven't earned your own self-belief. And so the person who needs self-belief the most is just someone who hasn't taken the time to work on their own self-belief.
Wow. Okay. Right from the start. Self-belief is not something that's really out there for people to learn about. When you started talking about the journal you've created and how you've put all this together, I guess following on from that, why do you think people who are even at the top level have focused on their training, have focused on probably nutrition, but potentially left out their mindset?
I think because it's such a hazy area. Okay, I think it's because it's intangible. So it's very, very easy to look at our technical component of our sport. So look how easy it is to analyze technique in running. You can say, not like that, like this, and you have something very tangible to point to and to develop and to work on. How do we do that with our mind? How do we do that with our self-belief? How do we do that with these intangible elements of ourself? So people might say, mindset is everything, but this statement is just so vague. It doesn't really mean anything. And so the real truth is people don't know how to work on their mindset. They don't know how to work on their self-belief. And that's why these things are sort of vaguely out there, but they're not broken down and taught step by step in a very practical sort of methodology, unlike you would the technical component of any other sport or domain.
So good. When I was first getting into ultras, all of my mentors would tell me this sport is 50% mental, 50% physical. Some of them would say 90% mental,
Yes.
10% physical. No one could ever explain to me what the mental side was. And for you to sum it up and say it's the intangibles, but working with you, it is intangible, but the results come so quickly when you grasp the like you said, when you grasp the mental side of it and you apply it. It's like a part of you unlocks.
Exactly.
Is that your experience with across the people you work with?
Yeah, 100%. So I think what I do is I take this thing that is very vague, very abstract, very hard to define, and I show people very clearly how to see it, how to recognize it within themselves, so that they can say, oh my God, I see that thing now. I understand that thing. So it's kind of like, I feel like I show people like the maths behind their thinking and the maths behind their self-beliefs or whatever it may be. When you can identify them and see them and you understand the mechanics of how thinking functions, it takes it from being abstract, vague, intangible into something that you can actually really see. Even though it's still invisible, my thoughts are always going to be invisible, but we can break it down into frameworks, into mental frameworks, and into very, very clear beliefs. I point out how to see these things. So I take them out from this vague sort of out in the ether and I say, oh, let's bring it down into this particular thing, into this particular way we talk to ourselves, into this particular way of seeing ourselves or what we believe. And so it's really about making it tangible, realistic, and practical.
You do that so well. I remember our first ever conversation where I'd been referred to give you a call and we set up a time, I gave you a call. And I tell you, in the back of my mind, I was like, I've worked with mindset coaches before, or I've read this stuff before.
Mm-hmm.
And I never felt like I had something like practical, tangible to
Mm-hmm.
work on. I felt like it was esoteric and out of reach. And for me, I struggled to pull it down into specificity. But in that first call, I remember still clearly in the first couple of minutes, I was like, whoa, you've got this ability to see. I thought you saw me like straight away and you were able to pinpoint things that I was saying and then give me strategies to go off and work with them.
Mm-hmm.
And to build on what you've done with this journal, I feel like I'm getting that every single day with the way that you've unpacked it. Can you talk about, was it that you work with so many people over so many years that you realize what works and you put in the journal, or how did the journal come about?
Okay. So to answer your first question, yes. So working one-on-one with people and one-to-many people, it just gave me this incredible depth of experience across the board. And I absolutely love working one-on-one with people because we can be so real. It is so meaningful. We make incredible progress. People feel incredibly supported. We have this huge connection. I am completely invested in their goals and in what they're doing. I absolutely love one-on-one. but I wanted to do more. I wanted to help more people. I know that there are so many people out there who just, we just fundamentally struggle with our mind. We, the nature of the mind is to sort of accidentally always undermine us, or we just don't feel worthy. And, I just think that this is like the biggest lie that we ever believe, is that I'm not worthy. I'm not good enough. I can't do this. This is above me. And I want to change that. I know how to change that. I've done it over and over and over for hundreds of people. I've worked with thousands of people. And our psychology is really, it's very, very human. And so I just realized that the biggest problem I see is people's fear of believing in themselves, or the inability of the how. Like, how do I actually believe in myself? And I was like, I can actually truly solve this problem for people. And so I thought, right, how can I do this? How can I do this in such a way that I'm making more of an impact, not just to like one person here and then another person here. How can I do this at a greater volume, but still with depth, but still with real transformation? And that was the seed for this journal. I thought I can show people how to work through these things based off my knowledge and experience with coaching. First of all, with my own mindset, and then in teaching other people how to do these things for themselves. And so that is how the journal was created, and taking all of my knowledge and experience and just understanding fundamentally what works and what doesn't work, and putting that into the journal. The one thing, like, it really guided the whole journal system, and the whole architecture of the way that the journal is put together, like month on month, and then broken down week on week. And it's even in the daily architecture. So knowing exactly what coaching questions to ask someone, teach them this coaching insight, give them just this one focus, give them this type of journal prompt. And the journal prompt is really a coaching question as a journal prompt, and then the way that I provide an example answer for them. And that's also taken from coaching, because I know from coaching, if you just ask someone something, they generally don't know. You need to help them to come to conclusions, or give them a bunch of different opportunities to say, like this, like that, like this. And then they feel like, oh, it's that one. And so it really definitely informed why I created the journal and how I put the journal together as well.
Yeah, that's been my experience. Is it's broken down so well. Like, you've done it month by month. We've got a theme for the month, or a chapter for the month, if you like, and then every day is a journal prompt that sits under that chapter. But it's the way you lay it out. So I do it in every morning. First thing in the morning, I open up it's a PDF format, so easy. But you've got the topic for the day, and I open it, I go, whoa. That's something like straight that maybe hits me straight away. For example, what was this morning? Overcommitting. And I was like, well, I just actually worked through this in my life, because I've realized it's a problem. And boom, there it was. And then you give examples, then you give food for thought, then you give a background and an example of how it could play out. And then we go into the journaling. So it's like you set it all up, you teach us, but then it's like you're sitting next to me, coaching me through it. And I get that every single morning. So I love it. I want to talk more about it as we go, but let's get back. You talked about how you work through your lack of self-belief and your not good enoughness. Could you tell us a bit about that, and how you dealt with that and overcame it in your, I guess, in the context of
Yeah.
karate life? Yeah.
Yeah, of course. So I think it's really important to sort of understand, like, self-belief is an inside-out job. And I think the reason that I relate to all of my clients so much is that I was that person. I was that person who might have had some confidence on some level, but beneath all of that, there is always like this deep sense of worthiness, or really a fundamental lack of worthiness. So if we don't grow up in an environment where we are incredibly deeply nurtured, and where self-belief and fundamental worthiness is just provided at every turn. And like, honestly, I just don't even know if this exists for anybody, because it's just not a perfect world. And this is actually the whole point of life, is to like discover ourselves and to be flawed and to have fears and to have doubts. So this isn't to say that, these people grew up wrong or anything like that. This isn't about judgment, but this is about just meeting ourselves where we're at. And so I definitely came from an environment where I just didn't have a fundamental sense of self-worth, but I didn't really know that at the time. So I ran away from home when I was 16, and I think, I just had a lot of fear within myself about navigating life. But the way that I expressed that was through sort of being bold and really going for things. So on one level, it looked like I was very confident, but underneath all of that, I didn't really have a really strong sense of psychological safety or feeling like just really, really worthy. And it wasn't until I started doing karate that I had this vehicle for creating myself, someone that I actually wanted to be. Because before that, I was quite aimless. I was also quite destructive in many ways. I didn't have a lot of focus. I wasn't focused at all, in fact. And if we sort of don't really have goals that are meaningful or purposeful, or if we don't feel a really strong sense of purpose and ambition or going for things, what are we sort of doing? Why would we believe in ourselves if we're just sort of showing up to life in this haphazard sort of way? So when I started karate, that was when I really discovered self-mastery, how to start to control my thinking, how to start to manage my thinking, how to start behaving in a way that I respected and appreciated and valued. And so there was this great big journey of wanting to really master not just my physicality and all of the karate techniques, but I also really wanted to master my inner self, master my thinking, master my mood, master my emotions, manage all of those things, because that's what a karateka is. It's not just a sport, it's a way of being. And I really took that on board very, very deeply. And so my karate journey really became this discovery and the creation of myself. And look, you know what? I'm not ashamed to say that I was pretty flawed. I certainly wasn't the perfect karateka by any means. And that's okay. I was just trying to do my best and work things out. But from that process, that's where I really learned how to start building the self-talk of someone who believed in themselves and who backed themselves in a really empowering and real way.
I love what you've just said then. I think so many people who are listening can relate that journey to running. I think running gives so many of us a vehicle to explore who we are. And like you said, set goals. Out of the context of, say, a career goal or a different goal, it's like I can go after this big goal that I don't believe I can go after. And then it's all of those learnings and growth along the way. I can really see the parallels between what you just said about karate and running.
Yeah, and it's the same for all of us, whether we're a boxer, whether we're a runner, whether or not we're running a business, it doesn't matter what our sport is. All of these things can be the vehicle for us creating ourselves. Like, it's the process of, because otherwise we're just sort of going through life. But when we have a big goal, or when we do, like, the reason we can find ourselves through running is because it tests us. It tests our ability to do hard things, to go beyond what we think is possible for us. It tests us and it requires us to become a new iteration of ourselves at each stage of running. So in the beginning, we're just proud of ourselves because we can run 5K and we think this is fantastic. But then we think, what if I did 10K? What if I did 10K like this? What if right? And then it's like, what if I did a half marathon? What if I did a marathon? And then you think I couldn't possibly do an ultra. And then you start iterating on your level of self. So it's this expansion of yourself and of your potential. But as we get to each stage, it requires a new belief system so that we can hang out and feel comfortable and worthy at that level of wherever we're at.
Amazing, amazing. And that's a lot of the work that you and I did was as we go to that next level, we need to think and believe differently and access different parts of ourselves and let go of parts of ourselves. So for the person out there who just listened to what you said and's like wondering where they sit, how do we limit our self-belief? What are the signs that people can start to pick up on themselves that they might be accidentally limiting themselves?
Okay. Well, that's a really, really big question because, or perhaps it's that the answer is really, really big. So honestly, there are an almost infinite number of ways that we can accidentally limit ourselves. But really, the bottom line is, how are we thinking about ourselves? How do we think? And then what do we believe? So I understand that that's very big and very vague. So let me nut it out a little bit more clearly, or a little bit more specifically. So if we have some just mental frameworks that shape our thinking, and these mental frameworks really uphold how we think, for example, about ourselves. So an example of a mental framework that's going to shape a type of thinking that could limit our sense of self. These could be the invisible rules that I have for myself. Now, I don't realize, that's why I call them invisible rules, because we don't really realize that we have these rules. So the rule might be something like, when I get to that level, then I'll believe in myself. And we don't realize that we make this invisible agreement with ourselves, but it's like this mental framework. And so it might be an if-then statement. So it might be, if this, then I'll believe in myself. If I run 7 days a week, then I deserve to feel better about myself. If I miss one running session, then it's all going to fall over. If I started running late in life, then I'm never going to be a good runner. If I'm a little bit heavy, then I deserve to feel really embarrassed about my running. And it just goes on and on and on. And so that's that's like the low-hanging fruit. This is what I would call like a lead domino for our thinking. So if we can pick up on this one, the lead domino is the thing that tips over all these other dominoes. So if we can recognize this one style of thinking, this mental framework, we can realize all of the other ways down the line and we can catch all of them. So that's one kind of good example of how we might accidentally limit our self-belief. Another way is really around just what our core beliefs are. What are the core beliefs that you have about yourself? And so these might look like I am statements. So for example, when I'm working with a client, I'm just constantly listening for these types of things because it tells me this is the level of belief this person currently has about themselves. So the way that you would finish this sentence, I am a middle of the pack runner. So I can tell immediately with that type of sentence what level of, do you see, that person doesn't need to tell me exactly. So you tell me, Rob, if someone identifies as a middle of the pack runner, what level of belief do you think they have about themselves?
Yeah, like a mediocre, I can only ever reach this level or this place or this time.
Right. And so do you see that's coming off the back of their core belief about who they are?
Yeah.
And if we continue, and this is where people might push back. So if some of if you've got a listener right now who's tuning in saying, but Claudine, that's just me being realistic. So I'm going to very respectfully highlight this idea of being realistic as a very, very common way that we accidentally limit ourselves. So this will be like our third way that we accidentally limit ourselves, right? We've got our invisible rules, we've got our identity statements, And then we might have what we consider to be realistic. So if I think that something is unrealistic, well, guess what? I'm probably right, and I'm probably not going to be able to do that thing. Versus if I disagree and I think this is realistic, then I have a much higher chance of me being able to do that thing. And so if I have someone come to me and they say, I really want to win Coast to Cosy, but it's not realistic, then I have to figure out how to help them to believe in the possibility that that's realistic. And so it's about opening up. This is where we need to really shift and do the inner work of how do I see these intangible things that are invisible to me? How do I make them tangible and realize what I'm calling realistic could just be fear. And the fear is simply that I'm not good enough to actually do this thing. It could be what we're calling realistic. It could just be a status quo bias. So what we think is rational is, in fact, it's just status quo, and it's just a cognitive bias. It's an unconscious cognitive bias, right? So it's not necessarily a fact that it's realistic. It's just that we've decided what's realistic. And respectfully, it's not necessarily realistic. It's a perspective. It's just an interpretation. And so if we can really question every time you hear yourself saying, I'm the type of person that, listen up, because however you finish that sentence is going to determine your level of belief. And when you say, that's just realistic or that's not realistic, listen up, because that's a really, really key sign that you might accidentally be limiting your self-belief by calling something realistic or unrealistic. And really, it's just an interpretation or an unconscious bias or a belief that you are using as a euphemism for realistic.
So for everyone listening, can you imagine working with Claudine? You've got somebody who can spot these phrases and this language that's hiding your level of belief, that's hiding your level of, where you think what you think to be true about the world. But you've got someone expertly trained that can pick up where you're sitting with your belief, your values, who you are, by the phrases that come out. And it's like learning a new language, because you've got someone who can spot things that you say to people every day and they agree with, or they, reinforce those beliefs. And it's similar this is my experience with the journal. I'm not working with you one-on-one, but you're working with me through the journal, and the journal's helping me to spot these things that I'm actually, where I am limiting. And so if you're listening, it's really difficult. It is possible, and I'm going to watch my language here. It's a learnable skill. It's more, I just be careful who I'm talking to. I'm just going to say it's difficult to spot these things in yourself, because it's like the water that you're swimming in. But when you've got somebody who's working with you, can just say, hey, you just said this, let's have a look at that. And that's what you did and continue to do for me, Claudine.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Rob. And that is 100% what I do. And they are incredibly hard to spot. And how can we spot something if we don't even know it exists? Right? I'm this major mindset nerd. I am a psychology nerd. I love and am obsessed with understanding and wanting to know, what did that person say? Like, this goes back to when I was competing right in the beginning. And I used to pay so much attention to what everyone was saying. I thought everyone was doing this. Turns out I'm probably the only person doing this. And, I always just paid so much attention. And not just to the people around me, but to the people I would be listening to on interviews, athletes, other people. And I would always be sort of deconstructing. And what did they mean by that? They said this thing. I think they meant this thing. And so I would always be sort of unpacking it. And it is extremely hard to see in ourselves if you don't know these mental frameworks, or you haven't spent the time learning them or understanding what the cognitive biases are, and I just want to make it really, really easy. People don't need to spend 3 years, 5 years doing a psychology degree. I still don't think that you're going to learn the stuff that's in this journal, even if you did, because this is very, very specific and very, very simple. So I might take these really hard to see things, and I take them into these really, really small bite-sized pieces, present this thing that's fundamentally really, really deep. Let's be clear, the journal is not shallow. It's deep. It's really deep. It's really insightful. But I just give one little thing at a time, and then we make that thing connect to the person so that they can see the thing, so that it's never overwhelming. And then they say, oh, how could I actually be doing this thing? How might I actually be doing this thing? Then they work it out, and then they can apply it. So, and that is really what I was trying to do with the journal, is like, how can I help guide people through this? So it makes me so thrilled, Rob, that's how it feels for you as you're going through it.
It does. It takes me back to when we were working one-on-one a few years ago towards me. I was that person that came to you and said, I want to win Coast to Cosy. And at one point when we were getting into the thick of it, into my stuff, and you shared something with me, and I kind of went, oh yeah, how did I spot that? That's so simple and easy. And you put on your stern face and you looked at me and you went, Rob, that might seem simple. It took me 10 years to learn that. But you were able to pinpoint where I was limiting myself and then give me the tool in the moment to stop it. I'm not going to say it instantly, but to have the awareness of what I was doing and then give me the tool to go and resolve it. And so that's, when you're using these terms like simple and 5 minutes a day and everything, like I know the wisdom and how long it's taken you to learn these concepts and put them, distill them into these applicable lessons for us. Yeah. I'm up to day 56. So I started this, 56 days ago. And just as you're talking, I've had a few flashbacks to days in the journal where I've woken up, I have a glass of water and I open my computer. It's the first thing I do. And I remember one day, well, I didn't actually wake up. I come home from a night shift, and because it was my routine, I opened up the computer, and I was like, the day was, I come off night shift. It was a rough night. All I wanted to do was go to bed. I had a treadmill session to do, and the treadmill was a pyramid, so you gradually ramping up the incline on the pyramid on the treadmill, and I wasn't looking forward to it. And I was looking forward.
We're looking forward to a pyramid session, Rob. No. Come on no sleep.
And I open up the day, and it was about deciding, and it was about making a decision to, and I can't remember the exact wording that I wrote that day, but your example led me to it. It's like, it was about your boxing session. You're like, I'm going to fully commit to this.
I was going to say, is this the one about commitment?
Yeah. Commitment. Yeah. Sorry, it wasn't deciding, it was commitment. And there I was, feeling a bit sorry for myself, about to crawl into bed. And I was like, no, that's it. I'm doing it. So I wrote down, I'm going to fully commit to this treadmill session today. And, I wrote a little bit more about what was going on and read through it, closed the journal and got on the treadmill. And I had one of the best sessions. And it was, I can relate to the work that we did. It was a feeling of freedom. And that was a feeling that I got working with you, where it felt like all of the overthinking or maybe the not enoughness that we worked through, that it was gone in this commitment.
Right.
That was just one. I think it was like day 22 or something like that in the early years. But that's an example. So I guess that's just one of my examples. But could you talk to that freedom? Because like a lot of us listening are, encumbered by thoughts and overthinking and that. But yeah, could you talk to how freedom fits in?
Yes. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Rob, for sharing that example. And good on you. You are such a legend. Like, I mean, you would be forgiven, right? This is where most people would say, of course you should go to bed. Of course they're going to give you the out.
Yeah.
Right. Now, the journal's the journal. It doesn't care it doesn't know that you've stayed up all night. And listen, you could have chosen something else, but you were like, no, I am going to choose this thing. Okay. So one of the things that really empowers us, and this is why I put this at the very start of the journal, is because you've got to, like, the power that we tap into when we decide. when we doubt ourselves, when we are in two minds, what happens to my focus? What happens to my confidence? What happens to my direction? What happens to my energy? What happens to my decision making?
It's all split.
Okay. Everything is, it's just disseminated into different, like maybe this, maybe that. And that's the mental noise that we have. That's part of it. That's some of it. But the simplicity of the non-negotiable is so freaking empowering when we say, no matter what, I'm not eating this. No matter what, I'm doing this workout. No matter what, I'm doing X. And there's just something so incredibly liberating about this and freaking empowering, because we just get up and there's no more arguing. There's no more negotiations. When we can remove those self-negotiations we have with ourselves, it can be incredibly empowering. And so I actually see that that's probably when someone comes to me, they have a lot of what I would call split mindsets or fractured mindsets. And myself, I can see when I'm not feeling my most empowered, it's always because I have split mindsets going on and I'm accidentally undermining myself or second guessing myself, or I'm not deciding. But when you can just decide, holy heck, look out, but we can be so, first of all, we don't realize the power of making decisions, and not like some people struggle for 20 minutes over what they're going to have for lunch. Right. So it can feel like people who have a lot of confidence make a lot of very quick decisions and they trust their decisions. And people who don't have a lot of confidence or a lot of self-belief will struggle to make decisions because they worry they're making the wrong decision. So when you just execute on something, it's very empowering, and it creates this kind of flywheel of self-belief. Now, to come to your question around freedom, right? When we know who we are, when we know what we're here to do in life, it's full of freedom, right? When we don't really know, when we haven't really decided, what are we moving towards? We're not, it doesn't sort of have any momentum to it, right? But when we get really clear who I am, what am I here to do? How do I want to do it? How am I going to talk to myself? Do you see, this is all an act of conscious decision making, and you get the freedom is that you get to choose who you most want to be. What could be more empowering? What could be more liberating than choosing what you want to think, how you want to talk to yourself, the type of person you want to be? It's just this act of creation. And I really see that as an act of freedom, because you're not a slave anymore to unconscious patterns, to society pulling you in all of these different directions. You're not a slave, and you're not accidentally hypnotized by social conditioning. Women have to do like this, women have to be like that, men of this age need to do this, be like that. No, we're just free. We're just authentically being ourselves. That's what I really, really love about the journal, is that it helps you to be really, really authentic. I am adamant about this, because self-belief can look any way at all. Right? There's no rule for how it must look. It depends on you, and it's you get to create your version of what you want your self-belief to be.
Ah, you've just given us a framework that I'm sure I'm sure people are relating to, because that really hit me hard. Because as you were talking, I'm thinking we don't get taught this stuff like growing up or at school or anything, and so
Yeah.
and then you alluded to it at the end. I was thinking, if we don't get taught to decide and who do I want to be and where do I want to go and how am I going to get there and how am I going to talk to myself, all the things you just gave us in that framework, then I was thinking, well, then what are making the decisions for us? And so we like you said, we get pulled away, and as you're talking, I'm like, yeah, that's the work we did, coming back to who I was, what I wanted. Then we made a roadmap of how to get there, and then you just consistently helped me strip away all of the stuff that was holding me back. And so, yeah, if you're out there and you're feeling that getting pulled in each direction, that it's not, go easy on yourself, because we don't get taught this. And I remember the session where you said to me, Rob, you've got one foot on the accelerator and one foot on the brake. And I when you said it, I was like, wow. And then I remember the feeling of, I've never thought that's what I was doing, but it was exactly what I was doing. And then we had a conversation about going all in after that. So from there, thank you for giving us that extra framework, because now people can start to say, oh, you know what, I think that I'm, that's me. And so from that, if that's them,
Yeah.
can you give us something practical for them to maybe ask themselves or decide, or, what do they do as a very first step if they've realized that they're in that space?
Well, I just want to be really honest, and I want to say that I think that this is fundamentally universal to the human experience.
Mm.
So I'm really grateful that you said, please go easy on yourselves. I think it's very, very important that we just remove all judgment about ourselves, because we come to the table with so much judgment, self-judgment. We often say, I'm so worried about what so-and-so is going to think, but actually it's just a reflection of how we're feeling about ourselves. When you asked me before about like part of my own journey, I didn't even realize, but I was so honestly just fundamentally ashamed. I just had so much shame about who I was. Anytime I wasn't perfect, anytime I wasn't excellent, anytime I didn't win. And so I just want to be really clear that, without telling anybody who they are, in my experience, I have found this to just be intrinsic to being human, because we accidentally get caught up into conditioned thinking and to conditioned beliefs. If anyone out there thinks that's not me, then respectfully, what is a gender reveal party for babies? How come is it that we all know that this blue color equals boy and this green color equals girl? No, it doesn't. It's just a freaking color. But we've all decided in our society that that's exactly what that means. And we need to do this in defense of humanity. We need to do this because we need to make sense of the world. We need to make things more simple and accessible. So, but in terms of a first step, I think the very, very first step is realizing that if you're a human being and it's very important to pay attention to what you think and what you believe, because it's very, very likely that we're living out someone else's belief systems. And that's a lot, right? That's a lot to sort of digest. But and then it's like, well, where did that thinking come from? But more importantly, sort of what do I do next with it? Look, honestly, there's no one sort of shotgun answer. But the first thing is just fundamentally noticing and paying attention to what you think and what you believe. And if you can notice, like at each part of the journal, I'm always saying, how do we notice? Like, let's just practice noticing our self-talk. Notice it like this, notice it like that, notice it like, and all of the different aspects. And then, as you said just before, Rob, having the awareness of it, it actually sort of removes so much of its power, because you can start to see, hang on, is this as true as I thought it was? So let me give you an example. When I really noticed my thinking that second place equals a loser, when I really stopped to look at that thinking, then I could ask myself, is this really true? Am I really actually a loser? So I'm going to have to give two steps, because it's impossible to just give one and have a solution. So the first thing is to really stop and notice, what are you thinking? And then the second thing to ask is this really 100% true? Or is this just partially true? Or could it be untrue? And when we start to admit to ourselves, this isn't 100% true, and respectfully, if it's not 100% true, then it ain't true. So then it can stop having such a hold on us, and we can start to free ourselves from these belief systems that are keeping us down and helping us to feel so unworthy or insecure.
That's an amazing answer. Brings up, I'm going to talk about an example that you and I worked through that hopefully people can relate to. We were still 5 months out from Coast to Cozzy that we were working to. That was our A goal. And I was doing a lead up race
Sorry, Rob, did we have another goal?
There was no other goal.
That was there was no people, there was no B goal, there was no C goal, there was just the goal. Sorry, I apologize.
Everyone just got a clear example of what it's like to work with Claudine. There was no other goal, so why did I put an A goal in? I was doing a lead-up race, a few months before Coast to Cosy, and you asked me just a simple question, something like, "Oh, how are you going to approach this race, or what's your feeling towards the race or intention?" And I think I said my usual thing. Oh, well, I'm just going there to get the kilometers and get some Ks in my legs or something like that. And boom, you were straight on me, and then you started to look at my talk, my self narration, and then my belief. And you were like, you lifted me to the level that I should have been thinking. I use should because I was thinking a level below where an accurate representation of myself as an athlete was. And you said, look at what you've done in the past, look at, the type of athlete you are. And I remember your words clear. And I know you used the word because you were driving it home. You said, Rob, you're a goddamn contender in this race. And I was like, whoa. And I'd never, ever thought of myself as a contender in any race before.
Wow.
And so when you're talking to being the awareness and then being aware of how you're talking to yourself, as I was preparing in those final couple of weeks of that race, that's the language that I took out in the training sessions and in between work that we were doing. It was like, I'm a contender. And then I trained differently. I trained intentionally as someone who could podium at that race, who could perform well. And that's the tangible way that you picking up language and belief systems in me transpired into me lifting and leveling up as an athlete.
That is such an awesome example, Rob. Thank you so much for sharing it. And I think, if we really very simply look at that, it's not having awareness of having a belief about yourself. So that's an identity belief. And the identity was quite vague, right? It was not even I'm a contender. So what typically happens is that if anyone is trying to convince you to believe in yourselves, they go from I don't believe in what they want you to do is they want you to go, I don't believe in myself. I don't believe that I can win this race. I'm not even and they want you to do that whole big leap. Just believe in yourself. They'll say, just believe in yourself. Just back yourself, Rob. Like, just you believe in yourself. You can do it. No, that is not going to close the gap. So we have to take these steps of what I call the believability scale. And I needed you to. So here's an example of an identity belief that is inaccurate. You just didn't have an accurate sense of who you were. Of course you were a freaking contender, right? We had all of this evidence in the past that you had performed really, really well. But in addition to that, you are just an excellent runner. But because we have all, I just mean, again, this is part of the human condition, is that almost everybody has an inaccurate sense of self. We have an inaccurate view of ourselves.
Wow.
We haven't, and can I just say, the reason I can say this is that I have done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these like leadership debriefs. So when you're a leader in a corporation or in government, you have to do a 360 leadership report. Have you ever done one of these, Rob?
Yeah, it's when you get like 360, the manager, the peers, people who know you all around you to give feedback of yourself.
Exactly, 100%. So you have to, so just for the listeners, if you haven't done one of these before or you haven't done it for somebody else, a 360 leadership report is where you get asked all these questions and you have to rate yourself. And then your boss has to do it and your peers and colleagues have to do it and your direct reports have to do it. And you're not allowed to be given the report and for you to just read the report yourself, because we're going to misread the report and they need an independent third party to come in and debrief on this report. And that was me. I've done hundreds of these. And so there are many different types of reports, but almost all of them, you open it up. I get the report first. I look at the report. I look at the very first page. There's a graph, and there's two graphs, and one is a graph representing what the self-perception is and the self-rating is. And then the second graph, and these are side by side, the second graph is what everybody else collectively thinks of you.
Mm.
And I realized very, very quickly that there was a pattern evolving. Like I picked this up really quickly, that the graphs typically went one of two ways. The person would either have a much smaller view of themselves and everyone else had a much bigger view of themselves. And that was a very high performer who was low in confidence and who didn't quite have an accurate view of themselves. So people who are quite competent can often feel that they're not worthy or they're not good enough because they have very high expectations. They should be better. They should be performing better. I know I could be right. So that would often appear to be a very high performer. And then there would be the low performer, and they would have a conflated sense of self. And so their graph would be much bigger, and everyone else was saying, not so great. And we all know someone like this in life, someone who thinks they're doing much better than they're actually doing, and they love to tell us how good they are at this and that. And really what's going on is that they have an overinflated sense of self. And in your case, it was you were a much better performer and a lower sense of what you were capable of doing. And my job is to correct the lens of perception. And I'm always striving. We just want an accurate self-perception. How am I really going? So I didn't say to you, come on, Rob, you just need to believe in yourself. I just pointed out to you who you already were. And it was like you kind of cleansed the lenses of your own perception. And you said, actually, that is accurate. Actually, I am that person. Then your identity caught up with who you really were. And then you could be the contender that you already were. And then after that, it was like you got comfortable there. And then it was like, okay, contender's not the goal. The goal is the champion. So then I had to help work out how to get you from this identity to the next identity in a very real and authentic way. And that was the rest of the work.
Yeah, amazing. Thanks for unpacking that. And as you're talking, I'm really thinking that you brought home. So I'd been on this journey of sports psych and coaching and all this for so many years. Then I met you, and you were like, you just brought everything into this succinct way that you have developed, and you were able to put it all together in a way that I've never been able to access. And I think you inspired me. I mean, I already had the podcast before I met you, but that's what I want. I see so many runners, especially ultra runners, and they're just so humble, and they're so. I can see that they were like me, like that. They don't see how good they can be or how.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that's what drives me. Do you see that across runners? I know you work with a few runners now.
I've worked with a lot of runners. I have worked with quite a lot of runners at really, really high levels, national champion level, world champion level, backyard ultras, runners who are triathletes as well, etc. And what I can collectively see as a broad generalization, so generalizations are always bound to be flawed. So if we can just accept that up front, but there's like this cultural belief system about what's appropriate. So for example, in boxing, it's very culturally appropriate to big note yourself, right? But that is absolutely not okay in a sport like running. Right. So there is this overemphasis on the importance of humility in running. And there's almost this version to believing in yourself if you're a runner. So it's almost this unwritten rule that says, if I'm a runner, then I need to be excessively humble and undermine my capability.
Wow.
Now, forgive me if you think, no, actually, Rob, no, you tell me, do you think that is being too harsh? I'll take it if it is.
No, I don't think it is. In my experiences, is the same. And I really think that it helps people to hear it in that direct way, because maybe they can identify where it might be alive in them.
Okay. And it might be, we love to claim, and when I say we, I mean humanity overall, because we really do love to do this. We love to say, like it's absolutely nothing, like not a problem in the world, that I'm my harshest critic.
Mm.
So we love to say, like, it's a no-brainer. Like, oh, of course I'm my harshest critic. Where on earth did we pick this up from? Where on earth did we think that this was a good idea to go around life being our harshest critic and being totally okay with it? Right? So do you see, it's another one of these unwritten rules. So there's this invisible, and when I say unwritten rule, what it really is, it's an invisible belief system. And these things keep us anchored into feeling inadequate, into feeling not good enough. And these are lies. These are just not true. Coming back to the thing of what can we do, we can ask ourselves, is this really true? Right? The problem that we face is that they feel incredibly true. Just because it feels true, the reason it feels true is that we love being right. Another tricky part of being a human being is that respectfully, we love to feel correct and we all are certain that we're correct. But in order to be coachable, we need to realize that some of the way that we're thinking is incorrect. It is not helpful. It is not accurate. It is not helping us to become the person that we most want to be. I love what you said earlier, Rob, about when you reach new levels of your sport, you need new levels of thinking. So if we believed a thing and we thought a thing and it served us, perfect. But in order to move to the next level, we've outgrown that thinking and it's okay. And in fact, it's perfectly welcome and beneficial to have new thinking. And I would encourage us to have thinking that supports us and empowers us. One where it says, believing in myself isn't arrogant. It's just a kind, supportive thing to do for myself because life is hard enough as it is.
Wow. Okay. There's been a few bombs you've dropped, but that's a big one. I hope everyone soaked that in as much as I did. And wow, Claudine, thank you. I just needed a couple of seconds to let that one
We can
soak
all
in.
just take a moment.
Yeah. I'm super respectful of your time. We're coming up close to time and I know how busy you are. I'm so grateful you came on today. What I want to ask you now is about the journal. So people have been listening, they've learned all about the journal, they know kind of how it's structured and everything. I'd love to hear you talk about it more. But what we haven't talked about, which has been so valuable to me, are the calls that the calls. So because you get to be on these calls with these amazing people from all around the world in all walks of life. We've got stock traders, business owners, singers, authors, runners. Like it's so amazing, and I get so much out of doing my journal every day and then jumping on these calls and hearing everyone else's experience. And one day that might not have particularly been that groundbreaking for me has totally changed somebody else's life and perception. And then it allows me to learn through them. So can you talk about the structure of the self-belief journal and how people can jump on board?
Okay. Thank you so much, Rob. Yeah, look, I've got to say, I absolutely love the calls so much as well. So for those who are listening, what Rob and I are referring to, these are live group coaching calls. So they are an option. Okay, if someone wanted to do the journal and to go through and to do this, 365-day mental training program, if they love working on their own and they love doing things independently, then the journal just in and of itself is exactly perfect for you. But if you like to, if you want additional support and if you want to like being around like-minded others, and if you want to get direct access and to work with me, then we have these live group coaching calls and where we focus on aspects of the journal as well, and where I'm teaching all things self-belief. And so we might go more deeply into different aspects of the journal, different insights. What was so amazing, to your point, Rob, was recently on one of the live calls when I asked everyone who was in attendance on a call to share one of their major insights from the journal, and it completely blew me away. that every single person had a different day from the journal that influenced them so much. So to your point, it's like this person really resonates with this thing, or that was super game changing for them. So yeah. So the calls are really beautiful and really, really empowering, and I think I love them just as much as everyone who comes to them. But so in terms of, if someone wanted to do the journal, was that the question that
Yeah,
you?
yeah. How do they jump on board and start either the journal or, as you said, the journal plus the calls?
Okay. So, yeah, so there are really two ways to do the journal. As I've just said, you can do it self-paced, or you can do the self-paced with the live support. And it's really, really incredibly easy. So you just go to my website, which is www.claudinechi, so CLAUDINECHI.com, and then /journal. And it basically explains, everything about the journal. You've got the full table of contents there if anyone wants to check it out, and you can basically just decide which version of the journal you want to do, whether or not you want to do it self-paced, and you get access to all of the PDFs and the daily videos. So you can actually do the journal as a daily video, or you can do it as a PDF. Rob was saying that he does his as a PDF. And so it's really just incredibly simple. And that part is actually easy. You can just join up and you get access immediately to the journal, and you can just start going from day one as soon as you join. But you get full access to the entire first month as soon as you join. And because I don't want people to get overwhelmed, I just release 1 month at a time. And then it just means that they can just, if they want, they can binge the whole month. But I want them to really focus on that and to learn those skills across the entire month before moving on to the next skill and to the next core belief theme for the next month. So yeah, incredibly easy, and just from the website.
Thank you. I'll put the website in the show notes. I just want to touch on a couple of things. I've done other journals before. So if the person out there is thinking, oh, I do a gratitude journal, or I won't mention any other, journals. Can you, I know the answer to this, but can you articulate better than me? Why is it different than all the ones I've done in the past or other people might have tried?
Okay. Absolutely. So if you look at most journals, they can, and I want to be very clear, they can absolutely be helpful. So I'm not saying that journaling is unhelpful. Absolutely not. But what most journals tend to do is that they might have a simple journal prompt. So, for example, what are you grateful for today? What are 3 things that you're grateful for? And this can be fantastic. You can be thinking about 3 things that you're grateful for, and you can capture that. But then what do we do? Then what happens? What is next? So we can have a different, reflection the next day, but it doesn't take you anywhere. It's not building a skill. This journal, the self-belief journal, systematically, methodically is architecturally engineered and structured to build a skill, and it is the invisible, intangible skill of self-belief. So this is really the world's first self-belief journal to systematically and practically teach self-belief as a skill. I really don't think that there's a single thing on the market even like it at all. And every single day is completely unique. So a lot of the year-long journals, or let's say it's a goal-setting planner or something like that, you might say, I'm going to write my goal down, and here are the tasks that I'm going to do to, work on my goal. Again, that can be very, very helpful, incredibly helpful. But what it's not doing is it's not teaching you a skill. It's not taking you on a journey, and it's not fundamentally changing the way that you think and believe about yourself. So that is why this journal is a complete standalone, there's nothing else like it teaching you, taking something that is seemingly impossible, like how do you practically build self-belief, and then breaking it down incredibly simply and digestibly into just these 5-minute daily increments that compound week on week, month on month to create this incredible, unstoppable, authentic self-belief.
So good. It's definitely the habit, like you said, the 5 minutes a day, it's probably not even 5 minutes a day, to be honest. Sometimes you knock it over in 2 or 3 minutes. But I don't want it, like you said about binging, I don't want to move on because I feel like each day is such an important, like you said, I feel like I am building a brick in the wall every day with these practical skills that I'm learning. So anyway, I highly recommend jump on board, go to Claudine's website. I'll put it in the show notes, and whether you do it.
And what that means, actually, Rob, what that means is if some of your listeners do join the journal and do come and they come to the live calls, that means that they're going to be coming onto the live calls with you and with me.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So that is incredibly exciting. And thank you so much, Rob. I'm so grateful for you sharing your incredible listeners with me and for inviting that. And thank you so much for not gatekeeping, for being so real and for saying to them, hey, I'm leveling up my self-belief and my mindset IQ, even though with all of the depth and wisdom you already have. So thank you for not gatekeeping and for inviting your listeners to come and join us. I can't wait to meet them.
Of course, there's nothing else like what you've built. And that's what I said to you right from the early days. I was like, we've got to share this because, I've looked everywhere and self-belief is this weird, wonderful, whimsical thing that you've been able to absolutely break down and build a whole new language and teach systematically, practically in a way that's habit forming and just so practical. So thanks.
Awesome.
Yeah. So it's my absolute pleasure to share this. And before we go, is there anything you'd like to say, last words of wisdom, or anything you'd like to wrap up today's call with?
Thank you so much, Rob. It's always just the best talking with you and, to be on your podcast. And thanks so much for sharing me with your incredible audience. I guess the only final thing that I would just like to say to your listeners is that it's never too late. It doesn't matter how long you might have gone through life not believing in yourself, but I just want to say, no matter where you've come from, no matter what you've been through, you are absolutely worthy of believing in yourself and in backing yourself. It's not something we all just naturally have. It's a skill that can be learned, and I absolutely can help you to do that and to build that authentically within yourself. So just know that it is absolutely within your reach and within your right. And I am 100% rooting for you to fully believe and to back yourself. It's what you deserve.
Wow. Thank you. Wow, you just made me well up. Thanks, Claudine.
Oh, Rob, you're adorable. Really?
Yeah, that was exactly. Thank you for ending the podcast in such a beautiful way. And wow,
Rob,
thanks.
you are. That only just goes to show what a incredibly kind-hearted and beautiful person you are. So thank you so much. Thank you for being so honest with yourself, and it really is just an honor to be here. So thank you, Rob.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Claudine. Thanks for listening to the Mindset for Runners podcast. I hope you got something practical and useful out of this podcast, or something inspiring to help you get out for your next run. If you have a question about Mindset for Runners or athletes in general, please email me at robmason.run@gmail.com and I'll answer your question on an upcoming podcast. If there's anybody you know who could benefit from the information I share in this podcast, please share it with them. See you next time.